For decades, anyone who looked up and saw a massive black triangle moving silently across the night sky had two choices: stay quiet or get laughed at. The government had a ready supply of explanations: weather balloons, experimental blimps, mass hysteria. The story never changed because it never had to. But something is different now. Official channels are acknowledging that triangular craft exist and can't be explained. Congress is holding hearings. Documents are moving. And the TR-3B, the craft at the center of 30 years of classified rumors, is suddenly being talked about in rooms where people are under oath. What the TR-3B actually is. Most people who've heard the name TR-3B couldn't tell you much beyond Big Black Triangle. So before getting into why this moment matters, it's worth understanding what this thing actually is, or at least what the evidence says it is. The physical description is consistent across thousands of independent reports. A triangular airframe, roughly the size of a football field. 3 white lights positioned at each corner. A single pulsing red light at the center. It moves slowly when it wants to, but witnesses describe it accelerating away at speeds that don't match anything in the known inventory. And it does all of this in near silence, which is the detail that stops aerospace engineers cold, because nothing that size should be that quiet. The classified origin story puts the TR-3B as a black-budget reconnaissance platform, developed sometime in the 1980s or early 1990s. The working theory among researchers is that it came out of the Aurora program, a classified successor to the SR-71 Blackbird that the Air Force has never fully acknowledged. The idea was a craft that could go anywhere, see everything, and never appear on a radar screen or in a budget line that Congress could find. The propulsion claims are where things get genuinely strange. According to whistleblowers who said they worked on the program, the TR-3B uses a rotating ring of mercury plasma pressurized at extreme levels. When energized, that ring allegedly generates a field that reduces the craft's inertial mass by somewhere around 89%. You reduce mass that dramatically, and the physics of flight change completely. You need far less thrust to move. You can change direction at angles that would destroy a conventional aircraft. And your acoustic signature drops to almost nothing because you're not fighting gravity the same way. Now, none of that is officially confirmed. The government hasn't published a technical manual, but the source base for these specs isn't just internet forums. Edgar Fouché, a man who spent years working in defense electronics at classified installations, went on record claiming direct knowledge of the program. He described the craft's dimensions, its propulsion concept, and its operational role in detail that matched reports from witnesses who had no connection to him. The Belgian UFO wave of 1989 and 1990 produced radar tracks and F-16 intercept data documenting a large triangular craft performing maneuvers the Belgian Air Force couldn't explain. Sightings over Illinois in 2000 were reported by multiple police officers across different counties who called in descriptions of the same object without knowing the others were doing the same. The consistency is the thing. Across 30 years, across different countries, across witnesses with no reason to coordinate their stories, the descriptions land on the same craft. 3 lights, triangular, silent, enormous, and fast when it wants to be. Nothing in the publicly acknowledged aerospace inventory fits that description, which raises the question of what exactly has been flying in classified airspace, and for how long, the black budget and why it stayed secret. To understand why no one in authority has confirmed the TR-3B, you need to understand how the US black budget actually works, because it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a line item. Every year, the Pentagon submits a classified budget request that runs parallel to the public one. Congress gets a heavily redacted summary. Most legislators voting on it have no idea what the money's actually buying. In recent years, that figure has hovered around $50 billion annually. $50 billion, with almost no public accountability for where it goes or what it builds. And here's what that money has produced before. In the 1950s, Lockheed's Skunk Works division developed the U-2 spy plane in total secrecy. When civilian pilots started reporting a strange aircraft flying at altitudes commercial planes couldn't reach, the government told them it was weather research. Then came the SR-71 Blackbird, still the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever flown, developed in classified conditions and kept off the books for years before the Air Force acknowledged it existed. Then the F-117 stealth fighter, which flew operational missions for nearly a decade before it was publicly confirmed. The pattern is the same every time. Build it in secret, deny it exists, then eventually let it slip out once the technology has moved on to something newer. The TR-3B fits that timeline. If development began in the late 1980s under Aurora program funding, a classified program the Air Force has never formally confirmed, but has never cleanly denied either, then by the mid-1990s it would have been operational. And by now, if something newer replaced it, there'd be less reason to protect it. Except the propulsion concept changes that calculation entirely. A conventional stealth aircraft, once declassified, doesn't hand your enemies a physics breakthrough. The F-117 became public knowledge and the world moved on. But a craft that reportedly reduces its own inertial mass through a rotating plasma field? That's not a design advantage. That's a rewrite of what aerospace engineering is capable of. Any government sitting on that technology would classify it forever, not because the aircraft is valuable, but because the underlying science is a weapon in itself. The classification infrastructure that keeps this buried runs deeper than most people realize. Black programs don't operate as single units where everyone knows the full picture. They're compartmentalized. Teams working on separate components with no knowledge of what the other teams are building or why. A contractor who spent 3 years machining parts for the propulsion ring might never know what those parts were for. That's deliberate. It means there's no single person who can walk out and describe the whole program, because almost no one ever sees the whole program. Edgar Fouché was one of the exceptions, or so he claimed. He worked in defense electronics at classified facilities including Groom Lake, and he described the TR-3B in technical terms that aerospace researchers took seriously enough to argue about. His reward for going public was the standard one. His career was questioned, his credibility was attacked, and the institutional machinery that protects classified programs did exactly what it was designed to do. That held for 30 years. Then the disclosure movement arrived and started pulling threads. The UAP disclosure era and what it means for the TR-3B. The shift started in December 2017, when the New York Times published a story that the Pentagon had been running a secret program to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP. 3 videos shot by Navy pilots showed objects moving in ways that defied explanation. No wings, no exhaust plume, no sonic boom, pulling maneuvers at speeds that would kill a human pilot. The Pentagon confirmed the videos were real. That confirmation was the crack in the wall. What followed wasn't a slow drip, it was a flood. By 2022, Congress wasn't just asking questions in private briefings. They were holding open hearings, on camera, with witnesses under oath. Not fringe subcommittees. The Senate Armed Services Committee, the House Oversight Committee. These are the people who control military funding, and they were publicly stating that UAPs represented a national security issue that had been mishandled for decades. The testimony from those hearings is worth sitting with. Military pilots described objects with no visible propulsion system holding position against 120-knot winds. Objects that dropped from 80,000 feet to sea level in seconds without a heat signature. Objects that appeared on radar, disappeared, then reappeared miles away with no flight path connecting the 2 points. Every performance characteristic they described maps onto what TR-3B witnesses have been reporting since the early 1990s. The triangular craft kept coming up specifically. By 2023, leaked footage showed a UAP that analysts couldn't categorize moving over a military installation. Separate reports from personnel at multiple U.S. bases described large black triangles operating in restricted airspace, moving without sound, without lights beyond the 3 white points at the corners. The Air Force didn't explain them. The Pentagon didn't explain them. They were logged as unresolved. Then came the legislative pressure that changed the legal architecture around all of this. The National Defense Authorization Act now requires the Department of Defense to conduct a full inventory of any UAP-related materials, craft, components, biological samples, documents. Every agency with relevant holdings has to report what it has. That's not a request, it's a legal mandate with congressional oversight attached to it. For the TR-3B specifically, that mandate matters more than any single sighting report. Because if classified triangular craft exist inside U.S. programs, they fall under the scope of that inventory. The DoD can't acknowledge a UAP in one hearing and then claim ignorance about a triangular aircraft in another without those two positions colliding. The wall between unidentified and classified is getting thinner every session. The admission that's been hiding in the open is this: senior officials, when pressed, have repeatedly said they cannot rule out that some UAPs are classified American programs, that one part of the government is flying without informing the rest. Read that carefully. They're not denying it. They're saying the left hand may not know what the right hand built, which is the exact infrastructure that TR-3B researchers have described for 30 years. Compartmentalization so deep that even the people tasked with investigating UAPs don't have clearance to see what's in the relevant program files. Every time an official says, "We can't rule out that this is ours," they're validating the core argument. The craft exist. They're triangular. They perform beyond the acknowledged envelope. And somebody built them. The only question left is who? And that's where the story fractures into two very different answers. American Black Project or something else entirely. So who built it? That's the question that splits every serious researcher in this space into two camps. And both of them have a case worth hearing. The first camp says the TR-3B is American, a classified platform developed inside the black budget system, flown by U.S. personnel, and kept from the public for the same reasons the SR-71 was kept secret until it wasn't. The evidence they point to is circumstantial but dense. The sightings cluster near military installations. The timing of the most concentrated report waves lines up with known black budget spending spikes in the late 1980s and early 1990s. And critically, reverse engineering programs have now been alleged under oath before Congress, not by fringe researchers, but by people with security clearances and verifiable government service records. If the U.S. recovered foreign technology at any point and built working craft from it, the TR-3B is exactly what that output would look like. The second camp says the propulsion physics don't fit. Even granting decades of classified research that the public never saw, the leap from known aerospace engineering to a functional mass reduction drive is not a small step. It's a different category of science entirely. The gap between the most advanced publicly acknowledged propulsion and a mercury plasma ring that cuts inertial mass by 89% isn't a gap you close with a bigger classified budget. It's a gap you close by starting from a working example you didn't build yourself. That's where David Grush's testimony enters the picture. Grush is a former intelligence officer who appeared before the House Oversight Committee in 2023 and stated under oath that the U.S. government has retrieved craft of non-human origin and has been running a reverse engineering program on them for decades. He said the program operated outside congressional oversight and that people who tried to report it through official channels faced retaliation. His specific claim wasn't that the government built something strange, it was that they found something strange and then tried to figure out how it worked. If Grush is telling the truth, then the two camps aren't actually in disagreement. The TR-3B could be real, could be flying under U.S. operational control, and could still not be something humanity invented. It would be both, a craft the Air Force flies and a craft no American engineer originally designed. That framing resolves the physics problem. It doesn't resolve the much larger problem of what that means for everything the public has been told. There's also a strategic angle the government benefits from that rarely gets named directly. If the working assumption is that any triangular craft in restricted airspace is just a classified American program, then no one asks the harder question. The "it's probably ours" narrative is a useful lid. It keeps the conversation inside the box of national security and away from anything that would require a more uncomfortable answer. Governments are good at letting convenient misunderstandings run without correcting them. Either way the argument resolves, the conclusion is the same. The TR-3B is either the most advanced aircraft any nation has ever built and operated in secret for 40 years, or it's something recovered from a source that didn't come out of a Lockheed facility. Both answers mean the public picture of what flies in controlled airspace is missing its most important chapter. And both answers mean the denials, the ridicule, the weather balloon explanations. All of it was a deliberate choice to keep people from asking the right questions. That's what makes this moment different from every previous UAP news cycle. The questions are now being asked in rooms with legal authority to demand answers. Whether the TR-3B turns out to be America's most guarded secret or something stranger than that, the decades of official silence around triangular craft are ending on someone else's schedule now, not the government's. For a long time, Japan has maintained a strictly defensive position in its military owing to its demilitarization by the United States after the Second World War. However, watching the Kremlin and China forcing conquests of militarily vulnerable nations, Tokyo joined forces with the United Kingdom and Italy in founding the Global Combat Air Program toward the creation of next-generation fighter jets. Could Japan be leaning towards a more proactive military approach? How has Russia taken this news? Join us as we discuss how Japan's new fighter jet rattles Russia. Over the years, Japan has maintained peace in its military structures, but it wasn't always so. Before the mid-1940s, they were a part of the massive military force under Emperor Hirohito that worked in tandem with Hitler's Nazi Germany forces and the Italian forces during the Second World War. Their improved technology and daring spirit to go after the United States on their own turf in Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, became a calling card for their military strength. However, following the United States' decision to join the war and the atomic bombs released in parts of Japan, especially Hiroshima and Nagasaki, on August 6 and 9, 1945, the Japanese Empire surrendered their arms. They did not, at the time, have an answer for an atomic bomb. But not only did Japan have to surrender their arms, it also had to surrender some part of their rights as a sovereign state to the United States. Following their tragic loss to the United States during the war in 1945, America occupied Japan for 7 years, enforcing a new constitution, where Article 9 conveniently stops them from owning a military force. While some of the top Japanese lobbyists tried to fight against it, they failed, as the country had already set a precedent of war when they hit Pearl Harbor, and now the United States, which drafted the post-war Constitution, was strong-arming them into total submission and dominance. Having no choice but to sign, Tokyo has always kept its nose clean, avoiding war, and quite reluctantly becoming a home to 14 of the biggest military bases that belong to the United States, including the Yokota Air Base in Tokyo, the headquarters of U.S. Forces Japan, the Kadena Air Base, the Yokosuka Naval Base, the Misawa Air Base, and other strategically located military bases for the sake of protecting Japan should a war ever be on the horizon. Although Tokyo is unable to create its own military, it has been afforded the luxury of having a self-defense corps called the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, or JFDF. While Japan has politically shied away from referring to these self-defense forces as military, they are trained in the same way that a military is trained. Although they are not allowed to wage war on another country, as the United States forces control that part, the JFDF is a highly trained elite force, which is very capable of defending their homeland on their own turf if push ever came to shove. Owing to their demilitarization, Tokyo had refrained from manufacturing offensive weapons or military technologies in order to keep honoring their agreement with the United States. While they continued to uphold that posture, the Indo-Pacific region suddenly developed a reputation for China, which has a plan to dominate Southeast Asia through conquest, taking their lands and occupying the targeted sovereign states with a principal government to whom they report back. A perfect example is China's decision to coerce Taiwan into submission. Beijing has completely ramped up its intensity to take over the South China Sea via maritime dominance. The Taiwanese president, Lai Ching-te, who has leaned more towards the West for assistance, including the United States, angers China with their decision to keep bridging the all-powerful West into Indo-Pacific regions, making conquest harder than it used to be in the past. In a recent speech at the 2025 Shangri-La Dialogue, the United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth told the audience that China's attempt to conquer Taiwan by force could be imminent. Although China has made no comment about the situation escalating towards an all-out war, its consistent aggressive movement towards the South China Sea along the Taiwan Strait all points to war. Although Taiwan is not demilitarized like Japan, Its army and military might not compare to the huge Chinese military force and their war technology, making any type of war between both countries asymmetrical. Tokyo, which has been watching from the sidelines as militarily vulnerable countries are up for grabs by bigger sovereign states, has kept its cool and continued to honor its agreement with the United States without a fuss. However, their concerns continued to grow in 2014, when the Kremlin annexed Crimea and Ukraine with the aim of taking over the territory and, by extension, all of Ukraine. Little by little, the Japanese government turned up its defense technology, upgrading it to offense. Although there has been no confirmation as to why Tokyo suddenly encouraged a spike in the creation of offensive military weapons, including fighter jets, the consistent threats of being gobbled up by a nation with a stronger military were not an uncommon theme, and they saw it too. Although they had the protection of the United States, other countries under the same type of pressure, particularly Taiwan, also have the protection of the United States, meaning that their military has a divided focus, a gamble that Japan was unwilling to take and would rather find a way to prepare for potential all-out war. By February 24, 2022, Japan's fears were officially confirmed as the world watched Russia take over Ukraine, moving in with military might and watching their fighter jets blow up Ukrainian infrastructure, their economy, and their people, with their biggest blowback being heavy economic sanctions from the United States, who are also trying to negotiate peace with the Kremlin rather than join forces with Ukraine to fight the oppressor. Although it is well documented that the United States has been sending reinforcements to Ukraine, including war funds and military support like the F-16 fighters, the war remains ongoing, and Ukraine seems to be on the losing side despite fighting the war on their own turf. These circumstances were enough to change the posture of the Japanese government towards military improvement. Ergo, in 2023, the Japanese government, supported by the United Kingdom and Italy, came up with the idea of a jointly run operation where they could safely develop a sixth-generation fighter jet that could send a message to other top military nations, including China, the United States, and, more importantly, the Kremlin. The initiative was announced on December 9, 2022, the same year that the Russo-Ukrainian threats of war since 2014 became an all-out war. The initiative creates an avenue for the three countries that are involved to merge their separate sixth-generation projects, which would include the United Kingdom-led BAE Systems Tempest developed with Italy and the Japanese Mitsubishi FX. Although Japan had been technically demilitarized, it kept its defense in check aerially, on the ground, and maritime. Aerially, they created an Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ, a region of airspace in which a country tries to identify, locate, and control aircraft in the interest of national security. It is declared unilaterally and may extend beyond a country's territory to give the country more time to respond to possible hostile forces aggressively without sanctions from any organization. But what makes the Mitsubishi FX, or F3 as it is called unofficially, so special that it is added as a potential study guide for a new next-generation jet? The Mitsubishi FX is a technology developed out of necessity by local Japanese companies, especially since the United States stopped the export of the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor to foreign nations, which included Japan, which did not have the military to defend itself in the first place because it had been demilitarized by the United States. Caught in this dilemma, Tokyo responded by building a domestically developed fighter jet to replace the F-22, which was no longer an option for them. Between 2009 and 2010, Tokyo delved deep into research on the latest fighter jets at the time, but decided against building the exact same things and instead looked to create something about a generation higher. It was no longer just about defense. It was about proving a point to the United States, which had faltered in its promises to help rebuild an aging air fleet that needed to be changed as quickly as possible. Following their research, they came up with the I-3, which translates to Informed, Intelligent, and Instantaneous Fighter Jet. Being Japan's first conceptualized fighter jet of the sixth-generation ilk, it was retrofitted with different functionalities, including advanced radar systems to counter stealth technology of other fighters, receiving targeting information from other platforms like drones, fighters, and airborne early warning and control aircraft. Use of flyby optics reminiscent of the Kawasaki P1 to process information faster, stealth technology, gallium nitride semiconductors to improve radar performance, and a new, more powerful engine that could give it a burst of hypersonic speed, Mach 6 and beyond. While the I-3 could be deemed a successful project, it was not going to be the end-all be-all for Japan. They needed something different, something designed for real air superiority. Enter the FX twin-engine stealth fighter jet. The Japanese Ministry of Defense described it as a technology with sixth-generation abilities. The Japanese Ministry of Defense was very much in a competition with the rest of the world, but mainly the United States, which at the time could boast of one of the biggest fighters in the world, the F-22 Raptor, but it traveled at Mach 2, which is twice the speed of sound. While it could be very much within the scale of the fastest fighters in the world, it was nowhere near the potential of the FX, which was proposed to be 6 times faster than the speed of sound. The FX is said to be bigger than the F-22, which has earned it the nickname Godzilla from Bradley Perrett at Aviation Week. The large size indicates the Japanese Ministry of Defense desires the aircraft to possess a very long range and a large payload capacity, meaning that it can carry much bigger ordnance than the F-22 while traveling at Mach 6 speed, and also be able to hit its target without faltering. It was the game changer. Technologies tested in the X-2 technology demonstrator will likely be incorporated into the FX fighter. Defense Minister Taro Kono has stated that the FX will possess strong network capabilities and will carry more missiles than even the crown jewel of the United States' aviation fleet, the F-35 Lightning II. The FX was a statement design that repelled almost everything the Raptor had, ranging from replacing the usage of conventional hydraulic systems with electric actuators. According to Japan's Ministry of Defense's evaluation, the reason for selecting electric actuators over hydraulic systems is because of the complexity of designing the interior of the stealth fighter. However, other than speed, the FX was designed for more. The Japanese Ministry of Defense wanted a jet capable of multiple functions. For some context, there are aircraft that are only capable of hunter missions, meaning that they can only be useful to gather information on the enemy and for surveillance and reconnaissance missions. However, they are also accompanied by a specific aircraft that does the job of aiming and firing at targets, called a killer. Hence, should there ever be a need to scout for problems and take them out immediately when the opportunity arises, the military sends the hunter and killer aircraft, with one primed to take out the target and the other tasked with identifying the target. However, when designing the stealth shape of the FX, the internal weapon bay and intake air ducts must be accounted for. Consequently, problems arise with installing hydraulic system piping due to design considerations such as rigidity and length. Hence, the reason that they adopted electric actuators, as they work with wires instead of pipes, eliminating the constraints once and for all. This results in simplified installation and reduced restrictions, allowing more flexibility in designing the body of the aircraft. But what really makes the FX special is its lightweight. Imagine an aircraft so big it is called Godzilla, weighing just a little more than a Raptor, even though it is considerably bigger. This was exactly what the Japanese aircraft developers were willing to achieve. Ergo, they tweaked the manufacturing design so far from the conventional designs. For some context, regular aircraft are mostly built using fasteners like bolts, screws, and nuts together to put up composite materials during construction. However, the FX designers took care of the extra weight from the fasteners by using adhesive glue to join composite materials together. This method is dubbed the integrated fastenerless structure technology. Although the fastenerless technology took a bit of weight away, the real chunk of weight is taken away by the use of lighter building materials like aluminum alloys and carbon fiber reinforced polymer. But the question is, if an aircraft is going to be flying at an unconventional speed of Mach 6 and above and in full flight, how do the softer materials like the carbon fiber reinforced polymer and aluminum alloys handle the heat that comes from the friction when the aircraft flies at that speed without getting burnt? Owing to the use of materials like carbon fiber reinforced polymer and alloys, the Japanese designers employ a heat shield technology, meaning that they add a component designed to protect an object or a human operator from being burnt or overheated by dissipating, reflecting, or absorbing heat. The Japanese Ministry of Defense's research team believes that the new design methods that help reduce the weight of the aircraft not only shorten the required working man-hours by 66%, but also propose a bit of a solution for the avionics system. The avionics of this aircraft centers around its hunter-killer enablers, ranging from its navigation system to radar systems and sensors. To help the aircraft avoid detection, enabling its hunter version, the engineers equipped it with top-class sensors like an active electronically scanned array, or AESA radar, a passive radio frequency, or RF sensor, and an infrared camera. The active electronically scanned array sensors are a game-changing radar technology that is powerful enough to track even stealthy aircraft without getting caught. Also, the aircraft is fitted with radio frequency, or RF sensors, which activate the aircraft's radio and use it to pick up signals and information without sending out its own signal, making it nigh undetectable to most hunter aircraft. But for an aircraft that flies at Mach 6, how does it sustainably protect its heat signature from hunter aircraft with infrared technology completely capable of reading heat signatures, especially from an air beast that big? The fighter is equipped with cooling systems around the avionics to reduce the heat that comes from the surface, keeping potentially large hotspots cool enough to avoid infrared detection. But it gets even better with the specially coated painting in pitch black that not only blends properly into the night sky, but also absorbs, spreads, and dispels the heat that comes from the friction of the aircraft, speeding at 6 times the speed of sound against the air. While its hunters are perfectly on display, the aircraft is retrofitted with an ASM-3, a supersonic anti-ship missile being developed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries to replace the ASM-1 and ASM-2 missiles, and also microwave weapons, or direct energy weapons in more popular parlance. Microwave weapons are the next level of fighter jet armament, as they are capable of ranged weapons that damage their targets with highly focused energy without a solid projectile, including lasers, microwaves, particle beams, and even sound beams. While it has not been actively found in use by most top militaries around the world because of its unpredictability, especially when aiming for a smaller and moving target, potential applications of this technology include weapons that target personnel, missiles, vehicles, and optical devices, now in the FX. While the hunter-killer missions are nigh perfectly suited to this aircraft, the Japanese history with war, which includes heavy losses of lives in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, prompted them to find a different solution when this aircraft is in use. Ergo, to reduce losses, they decided on introducing an unmanned combat aerial vehicle that can operate significantly beside the FX. Think of it as a shadow bodyguard that will be called the Combat Support Unmanned Aircraft, which would be responsible for carrying even more sensors and radars, making it easier to spot targets, or more importantly, threats to the pilot's life while he flies the FX. This wingman style is not too dissimilar from the Kratos XQ-58 Valkyrie or Boeing Air-Powered Teaming System project, where the drone acts as the loyal wingman to the aircraft. While the wingman drone to finally complement the FX is not touted to be available until the 20s, the FX has definitely started to ruffle feathers in Eastern Europe, particularly Russia. Although the Kremlin remains stuck in a loop of asymmetrical warfare with Ukraine over their decision to join forces with the West and sign up for membership as a part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, the course of the war could suddenly change when Japan completes the FX project. While it is unclear why Japan might be interested in picking a side in the Russo-Ukrainian war, the United States, which has already picked a side, Ukraine's in the war, holds a lot of sway in Japan, a country where they have military bases and where they are owed some respect because of Pearl Harbor in Article 9 of the post-war Constitution. Ergo, it isn't so hard to infer that they might influence Japan into equipping Ukraine with an FX, changing the landscape of the war completely. Whether Japan decides to support Ukraine with its new fighter jet, adding a new complexion to the war, or simply stays away from the Eastern European forces, remains to be seen. When the Anka-3 emerged from its hangar in November 2023, defense analysts around the world had to do a double take. This was not supposed to happen. A country that had been locked out of the F-35 program just a few years earlier had somehow built a flying wing stealth combat drone that looked like it belonged in a superpower's arsenal. How did Turkey pull this off? And what does their sudden emergence as a stealth aircraft manufacturer mean for an already tense global defense landscape? Join us as we explore the 10 most shocking aspects of Turkey's Anka-3 program. The event took place at the Turkish aerospace industry site close to Ankara during what was meant to be a normal display of Turkey's increasing defense abilities. Journalists were invited, along with military leaders and some foreign guests. No one anticipated what would happen next. When the hangar doors opened and the Anka-3 appeared, everyone fell silent. People were amazed not only because Turkey created a stealth drone, but also because of the specific type of stealth drone they built. The design, shaped like a flying wing with no vertical fins and smooth surfaces, showed some of the best aerospace engineering globally. Other countries with much more experience and money had a hard time getting this design right. Yet Turkey presented something that seemed to fit in the same category as the American B-21 Raider or the Chinese GJ-11. Defense journalists and military attachés started taking photos immediately. Some were impressed, calling it a genuine breakthrough that nobody saw coming. Others were skeptical, questioning whether the aircraft was actually functional or just a full-scale mock-up designed to generate headlines. A few Western analysts seemed almost offended, as if Turkey had broken some unspoken rule about who gets to build fifth-generation stealth aircraft. Regardless of their reactions, everyone understood they were witnessing something significant. The aircraft itself looked menacing in person. Painted in a dark gray scheme with sharp angular edges blending into smooth curves, it had that distinctive tailless flying wing profile that signals stealth to anyone who knows aircraft design. No tail fins jutting up to catch radar. No obvious engine intakes creating radar hotspots. Just clean, continuous surfaces designed to scatter electromagnetic waves in every direction except back toward the source. Turkish officials spoke briefly at the presentation. They said the aircraft is called the Anka and that it is made for high-altitude, long missions and will eventually carry smart bombs. After that, they stopped talking. There were no details about its specifications, performance, or when it would be ready for use. The message was clear. Turkey had built something impressive, and the world could figure out the details on its own time. What made the whole thing more shocking was the timeline. Just 4 years earlier, in 2019, the United States had kicked Turkey out of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program. The reason? Turkey had bought Russian S-400 air defense systems, and Washington considered that an unacceptable security risk. Losing access to the F-35 was supposed to be devastating for Turkey's Air Force modernization plans. American officials assumed it would force Ankara to come back to the table on American terms. Turkey's aerospace industry did not appear overnight. The country had been building toward this moment for decades, slowly developing the technical expertise and industrial base necessary to design and manufacture advanced aircraft. Turkish Aerospace Industries, the state-owned company behind Anka-3, traces its roots back to the 1970s. Back then, they were assembling American and European aircraft under license, learning the fundamentals of aviation manufacturing one rivet at a time. The real turning point came in the 2000s when Turkey committed to developing indigenous defense capabilities. Tired of depending on foreign suppliers who could cut them off at any moment for political reasons, Ankara started pouring money into domestic research and development. The initial projects were modest, upgrading existing aircraft, developing subsystems, and building unmanned aerial vehicles for reconnaissance missions. Each success built confidence and capability. The original Anka program, which began in the early 2000s, focused on creating a medium-altitude, long-endurance surveillance drone. It was not particularly sophisticated by global standards, but it worked, and more importantly, it was entirely Turkish. Engineers learned how to design airframes, integrate avionics, develop flight control systems, and manage complex aerospace projects from start to finish. Those skills became the foundation for everything that followed. By the time Turkey started working on Anka-3, they had accumulated nearly 2 decades of hands-on experience in unmanned aircraft development. They had also established partnerships with foreign companies willing to share technology, acquired advanced manufacturing equipment, and trained a generation of aerospace engineers who understood both the theory and practice of building military aircraft. The knowledge gap between Turkey and the traditional aerospace powers had been narrowing for years. Anka 3 was the moment that gap closed enough to matter. What separates Anka 3 from earlier Turkish aircraft is not just its stealth characteristics, but also its operational concept. This was designed from the start as a combat platform, not a surveillance asset that might eventually carry weapons. The flying wing configuration maximizes internal weapons bay capacity while maintaining a low radar cross-section. That means Anka 3 can carry precision-guided bombs and air-to-ground missiles hidden inside its fuselage, launching them without compromising its stealth profile. The aircraft reportedly has a wingspan of around 15 meters and an operational ceiling exceeding 40,000 feet. Those numbers put it in the same category as other high-altitude stealth drones, capable of loitering over target areas for extended periods while remaining difficult to detect. The jet engine, which appears to be mounted internally with carefully designed intakes and exhausts, provides the thrust needed for long-range missions and high-speed attacks. Stealth technology requires obsessive attention to detail. Every surface, every seam, every panel has to be precisely engineered to minimize radar reflection. Turkey apparently succeeded in mastering the complex materials science, computational modeling, and manufacturing precision required to make this work. That alone represents a massive technological achievement, one that places Turkey in an extremely exclusive club of nations capable of producing operational stealth aircraft. The flight control system deserves special attention. Flying wing designs are inherently unstable. Without a traditional tail providing natural stability, the aircraft relies entirely on computer-controlled surfaces and thrust vectoring to stay in the air. The software managing these systems has to make thousands of tiny adjustments per second, correcting for wind, turbulence, and pilot inputs faster than any human could react. Getting that software right requires years of testing and refinement. Turkey apparently got it right. The avionics system is another big success. Modern stealth planes need advanced technology to combine information from radar, infrared cameras, electronic warfare systems, and other sources into one clear view. Anka 3 is said to have a special radar that can track several targets at the same time while staying hard to detect. This type of radar needs advanced technology and processing methods that Turkey likely created or obtained despite restrictions on exports. The weapons integration system also shows considerable sophistication. Internal weapons bays must open, release munitions, and close again in a matter of seconds without compromising stealth. That requires precise mechanical systems, careful aerodynamic design, and software that coordinates everything perfectly. Turkish engineers apparently solved these problems, though exactly how they managed it remains unclear. The aircraft can reportedly carry a mix of guided bombs and cruise missiles, giving it genuine strike capability against both fixed and mobile targets. Building Anka 3 was not just a technical challenge, it was a logistical and industrial one. Creating an aircraft this sophisticated requires hundreds of specialized suppliers providing everything from advanced composites to precision machine components. Turkey had to either develop these capabilities domestically or find foreign partners willing to provide them, despite potential political pressure from the United States and other Western nations. Reports suggest Turkish engineers faced significant obstacles obtaining certain critical technologies, particularly advanced jet engines and some electronic warfare systems. International arms embargoes and technology transfer restrictions meant they could not simply buy what they needed from established suppliers. Instead, they had to improvise, reverse engineer, and develop indigenous alternatives. The fact that Anka 3 exists at all suggests they succeeded in overcoming most of these obstacles. The engine situation was difficult. High-performance jet engines require exotic materials, precision manufacturing, and decades of accumulated engineering knowledge. Turkey initially tried to develop its own turbofan engine, but apparently encountered difficulties meeting performance requirements. Industry sources suggest they eventually secured engines through partnerships with Ukrainian manufacturers, who faced fewer restrictions on sales to Turkey. Whether those engines meet all of Anka's requirements or represent a temporary solution, until domestic alternatives are ready remains unclear. Composite materials were another major hurdle. Stealth aircraft use specialized radar-absorbent materials that are difficult to manufacture and highly classified. Turkey had to either develop these materials from scratch or find suppliers willing to sell them despite potential diplomatic complications. Engineers reportedly spent years experimenting with different chemical formulations and manufacturing processes before achieving materials that met their requirements. Some of those materials may still fall short of what American or Chinese stealth aircraft use, but they apparently work well enough to make ANCA genuinely difficult to detect. Testing had its own challenges. Stealth aircraft need specialized facilities to measure their radar cross-sections accurately. They need secure testing ranges where foreign intelligence services cannot easily observe their performance. Turkey reportedly built new testing infrastructure specifically for ANCA 3, including radar measurement facilities and expanded flight test ranges. That infrastructure investment will pay dividends for future programs. The reactions from Turkey's NATO allies range from uncomfortable to outright hostile. American defense officials publicly downplayed ANCA 3's significance, suggesting it was less capable than Turkish officials claimed. Privately, the response was more concerned. Turkey developing advanced stealth capabilities independently meant they were less dependent on American military technology and therefore harder to influence through traditional diplomatic channels. Greece, Turkey's historic rival and fellow NATO member, watched the unveiling with alarm. The two countries have unresolved territorial disputes in the Aegean Sea and tensions over Cyprus that occasionally flare into military confrontations. The ANCA 3 gives Turkey a significant new capability in any potential conflict, one that Greece currently has no equivalent for. Greek defense officials immediately began discussions about acquiring their own advanced drones or developing countermeasures. European countries reacted in different ways. Some, especially those with defense companies that could work with Turkey, saw a chance for cooperation. Others were concerned about stability in the Eastern Mediterranean and whether Turkey's increasing military strength would make it more difficult to control within NATO. Additionally, Turkey's ability to do this while still having ties with Russia raised more worries among Europeans. Russia reacted calmly. Moscow has its own advanced military aircraft programs and probably saw ANCA 3 as proof that selling air defense systems to Turkey was a good choice, rather than seeing it as a direct threat. In fact, Turkey's ability to develop its own technology likely made it a more appealing partner for Russia, showing that Turkey has strong technical skills and is willing to resist pressure from the West. Saudi Arabia is interested in Turkish defense products and has already bought earlier versions of the ANCA drones for spying missions. The new ANCA 3 is a big improvement that might attract the Saudis, especially because they are involved in military actions in Yemen and have issues with Iran. The main concern is whether Turkey would hurt its relationships with Western allies by selling stealth combat drones to controversial customers in the Middle East. The United Arab Emirates faces similar considerations. Abu Dhabi has been working to reduce its dependence on American military technology after Washington blocked certain weapon sales over human rights concerns. Turkish stealth drones offer an attractive alternative, though political complications around the Abraham Accords and Turkish-Israeli tensions could complicate any potential deals. Qatar, which is Turkey's main ally in the Gulf, likely has access to the ANCA if they choose to. The two countries work closely together in military matters, including having a Turkish military base in Qatar. If Qatar buys Turkish stealth drones, it could change the power balance in the region, especially with the current tensions with Saudi Arabia and the UAE. This possibility probably worries other Gulf countries a lot. Pakistan is another potential customer with strategic implications. The country maintains close military ties with Turkey and desperately needs to modernize its air capabilities to counter India's growing military strength. Turkish stealth drones could provide Pakistan with asymmetric capabilities against a much larger adversary, though the technology transfer and cost considerations would require careful negotiation. Israel, which maintains a complex relationship with Turkey involving both cooperation and competition, viewed ANCA 3 through the lens of regional power dynamics. Israeli defense officials recognized that Turkey was positioning itself as a major military power in the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East. That could complicate Israeli military planning, particularly regarding freedom of action in Syrian airspace. When compared to other stealth combat drones, Anka-3 sits in interesting territory. It is more ambitious than most existing platforms, but less proven than systems from the United States or China. The American MQ-25 Stingray, for example, represents the current state-of-the-art in carrier-based stealth drones, but that program has taken nearly a decade and cost billions of dollars. China's GJ-11 Sharp Sword drone demonstrated flying-wing stealth capabilities years before Anka-3, but details about its operational status remain classified. What makes the Anka-3 particularly significant is not necessarily its absolute capabilities, but what it represents for Turkey's defense industry. This aircraft demonstrates that a nation outside the traditional aerospace superpowers can develop genuinely advanced military aviation technology if they commit sufficient resources and expertise. That changes the calculus for countries considering their own indigenous aircraft programs. The true combat ability of the aircraft is still not tested. Stealth technology is most effective when it works with advanced electronic warfare tools, better sensors, and connections to larger military systems. Creating the aircraft is one task. Creating the whole system that makes it work well in battle is another. Turkey will need many years of testing and improvements before Anka-3 can perform at its best. Turkey having stealth combat drones is important for more than just its military strength. For many years, powerful countries have used advanced military technology to control smaller nations. If you want advanced fighter jets, you need to maintain good relations with the US or Russia. If you need modern air defense systems, you should hope that China or a European group agrees with your political stance. Turkey's success with Anka-3 weakens that dynamic. If Ankara can build its own stealth aircraft, other nations might conclude they can too. That could accelerate the proliferation of advanced military technology to countries that previously had no realistic path to acquiring it. The exclusive club of nations capable of producing cutting-edge military aircraft is expanding, and that has profound implications for global security. Regional power balances will change. In the Eastern Mediterranean, Turkey now possesses capabilities that give it significant military advantages over neighbors. In the Middle East, Turkey becomes a more credible military power broker, able to offer sophisticated weapon systems to allies while demonstrating its own technological prowess. That enhanced status could translate into greater diplomatic influence. The relationship between Turkey and NATO faces new complications. Alliance cohesion depends partly on interoperability and shared systems. Turkey increasingly operates military equipment that does not integrate with NATO standard systems, creating potential coordination problems in any joint operations. At the same time, Turkey's enhanced capabilities make it a more valuable ally in scenarios where NATO needs regional military power projection. Arms export markets will also shift. Turkey has been aggressively marketing its defense products internationally, and Anka-3 gives Turkish defense companies a prestigious flagship product to showcase. Countries that feel uncomfortable with the political conditions attached to American or European weapons might view Turkey as an attractive alternative supplier. That could generate significant revenue while expanding Turkey's geopolitical influence. The question now is what comes next. Will Turkey stop with Anka-3, content to have proven its capabilities, or is this just the beginning of a broader push into advanced military aviation? Rumors already circulate about potential manned stealth fighter programs and more ambitious drone designs. Turkish aerospace engineers who cut their teeth on Anka-3 now have the expertise to tackle even more complex projects. International partnerships could accelerate Turkish progress. Several nations have expressed interest in collaborating on future Turkish aircraft programs, potentially providing access to technologies and expertise that would take years to develop independently. Those partnerships could help Turkey leapfrog certain developmental stages while generating revenue and diplomatic benefits. Other nations are watching and learning. If Turkey can develop stealth aircraft despite limited resources and international restrictions, what might larger or wealthier countries achieve with similar determination? The proliferation of advanced military technology seems likely to accelerate, driven partly by Turkey's example. The exclusive club of nations capable of producing cutting-edge weapons continues to expand. The world may never look at Turkey's defense industry the same way again. What was once dismissed as a regional player capable of producing decent but unexceptional military equipment has demonstrated the ability to compete with aerospace superpowers. Anka-3 forced a reassessment of Turkish technological capabilities and ambitions. Whether that aircraft ever fires a shot in combat almost doesn't matter. Its existence has already changed calculations in capitals around the world. The question is no longer whether Turkey can build advanced military aircraft. The question is what they will build next. When it comes to speed, military aviation has always chased the dream of building the fastest aircraft in the world. But the race for hypersonic flight isn't led by the United States alone. Russia's fastest fighter jet has been turning heads for years. What makes this aircraft so remarkable? And what hidden capabilities set it apart from the rest? Join us as we explore the capabilities of the Russian fastest fighter jet that shocked both America and China. The MiG-25 was not just another Soviet jet. It was born out of fear, an urgent fear that gripped Soviet generals in the late 1950s. At the time, the United States was showing off a new generation of supersonic bombers that could fly faster and higher than anything the Soviets had in their arsenal. First came the B-58 Hustler, an American bomber capable of flying at twice the speed of sound, or Mach 2. But what really alarmed the Kremlin was the XB-70 Valkyrie, a futuristic aircraft designed to cruise at Mach 3 speeds, 3 times the speed of sound, while flying at altitudes above 70,000 feet. From those heights and at that velocity, the Valkyrie could slip past Soviet air defenses and unleash nuclear weapons before anyone could stop it. The Soviet Air Defense Forces, known as the PVO, quickly realized their existing interceptor jets were useless against such a threat. None of them could fly high enough or fast enough to even catch sight of the Valkyrie, let alone shoot it down. For the Soviet Union, this was not just a military problem, it was a national security nightmare. In desperation, the government handed the challenge to the Mikoyan-Gurevich Design Bureau, the same team responsible for earlier MiG fighters. Their mission was simple to describe, but nearly impossible to achieve. Build a jet that could climb like a rocket, reach extreme altitudes, and fly at blistering speeds to catch and destroy American bombers before they dropped their deadly cargo. By the early 1960s, the project was officially approved. It was given the name YA-155, which would eventually split into 2 versions. The YA-155P would serve as the dedicated interceptor, while the YA-155R would act as a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. Both shared the same extreme design philosophy: speed and altitude above everything else. The MiG-25 was never meant to be a nimble dogfighter like later jets. Agility and long combat endurance did not matter for its mission. What mattered was raw performance. It needed to take off, rocket into the sky, and intercept intruding bombers in a matter of minutes. Think of it less like a graceful fighter and more like a guided missile with a cockpit. This extreme focus on performance shaped every part of the aircraft. It was built largely from nickel-steel alloys instead of lighter aluminum, since lighter metals would melt at the scorching temperatures caused by Mach 3 speeds. Its engines were massive and powerful, designed to push the aircraft at breathtaking velocity, even if they guzzled fuel at alarming rates. The MiG-25's mission profile was brutally simple: race toward the target at incredible speed, fire its missiles in a high-speed pass, and then return to base. There would be no circling battles, no extended patrols, and no flashy aerobatics. It was a specialist, built to counter one of the scariest threats of the Cold War. When Viktor Belenko's MiG-25P was taken apart by Western experts in Japan, the results stunned them. For years, the West had feared it was an advanced titanium superfighter capable of leaving every other jet behind. Instead, what they uncovered was a machine built with raw practicality, focused more on sheer performance than on refined craftsmanship. The most surprising discovery was its construction. Roughly 80% of the airframe was not crafted from lightweight alloys or futuristic titanium, but from arc-welded nickel steel. This choice seemed almost crude to Western eyes, but it was in fact a practical solution to a serious problem. At sustained speeds approaching Mach 2.8 and beyond, the skin of the aircraft would heat up to extraordinary temperatures. While titanium would have been an ideal material to resist such heat, the Soviet Union did not have the ability to produce it in the massive quantities required for such a project. Instead, steel was chosen because it was both available and strong enough to withstand the brutal thermal stress. This decision, however, came with enormous consequences. The aircraft was incredibly heavy compared to its Western counterparts. Its empty weight was around 20,000 kilograms, or approximately 44,000 pounds. To get such a heavy jet into the sky and keep it there, the designers had no choice but to give it enormous wings. These oversized wings created the necessary lift to support the steel frame, even if they made the jet look less sleek than other fighters of its time. Instead of smooth, polished panels like those on American aircraft, the MiG-25 revealed exposed rivet heads, rough welding seams, and visible signs of hand-built work. To experts used to precision assembly lines and elegant finishes, the Soviet aircraft looked rugged and unfinished. Some even described it as crude, a far cry from the advanced flying machines they had imagined. But what seemed unsophisticated on the surface was actually a clever reflection of Soviet design philosophy. The MiG-25 was never built to win beauty contests or impress with refined details. It was created to do one thing: fly at blistering speeds and extreme altitudes in order to intercept and destroy enemy bombers before they reach their targets. Every design decision, from the heavy steel body to the massive wings, was aimed at making this single mission possible. In a way, the MiG-25 was like a sledgehammer. It lacked finesse, but delivered devastating force in exactly the way it was intended. While Western engineers might have frowned at its rough look, they could not ignore the genius behind its practicality. The Soviets had accepted weight, sacrificed elegance, and ignored agility in order to gain strength, speed, and survivability. In the process, they created a jet that was raw, brutal, and unforgettable. Powering the mighty MiG-25 were two gigantic Tumansky R-15 B-300 single-shaft afterburning turbojets. These engines were enormous pieces of engineering, designed less for elegance and more for brute force. They produced astonishing power, with each engine generating close to 110 kilonewtons of thrust when using an afterburner. To put it in simpler terms, that was nearly 25,000 pounds of thrust per engine, enough to lift and push the massive Foxbat into the upper limits of the stratosphere. This raw force allowed the aircraft to sustain speeds of almost Mach 2.83 during normal operations. Such speeds were beyond what most Western aircraft could achieve in the same era, and they cemented the Foxbat's reputation as one of the fastest jets ever built. Yet there was always the legend of its fabled top speed, Mach 3.2. This incredible figure captured imaginations and spread fear among potential adversaries. However, reaching that speed was never intended for regular missions. In fact, it was only allowed under extreme emergency situations. Pushing the MiG-25 that far would cause the engines to run far hotter than their safe limits. The extreme heat would quickly begin to damage the internal components, meaning the engines would essentially burn themselves out if the pilot held that speed for too long. In other words, it was like having a self-destruct button hidden within the power plant, and Soviet engineers strictly forbade such recklessness outside of absolute necessity. As with all feats of extreme performance, there was a steep price to pay. The Foxbat's engines were incredibly thirsty. They consumed fuel at an alarming rate, particularly when flying at low altitudes where the efficiency dropped even further. This was not just a small drawback. It became one of the aircraft's defining weaknesses. Western pilots and engineers even nicknamed the Foxbat a gas guzzler, and the name was not far from the truth. While the jet could climb to incredible heights and outrun nearly anything in the sky, it could not stay airborne for very long without refueling. The limited efficiency of the R-15 engines severely reduced the fighter's combat radius. At best, the Foxbat could manage only a few hundred miles before needing to return or meet up with a tanker. This meant the aircraft was never suited for long-distance patrol missions or extended dogfights. Instead, its role was shaped by this limitation. It was designed to be a short-dash interceptor. The MiG-25's main job was to take off quickly, climb at an astonishing rate, reach extreme altitude and speed, intercept its target, and then return to base before its fuel tanks ran dry. This made it a very specialized machine. superb in its intended role, but limited if pushed beyond it. Despite these drawbacks, the Foxbat's sheer speed and altitude performance gave it a fearsome reputation in the Cold War skies. Its very existence forced rival nations to rethink their strategies and technologies, proving that raw power, even when paired with inefficiency, could still reshape the balance of air superiority. From its very first flights, it stunned the aviation world by setting world records that seemed almost unreal at the time. The aircraft soared higher and faster than anything most nations had ever seen, reaching an astonishing altitude of more than 37,000 meters in a zoom climb, which translated to over 123,000 feet. Such feats carved the MiG-25 into the history books as one of the fastest and highest-flying combat aircraft ever designed. Yet beneath this extraordinary ceiling of performance lay glaring weaknesses that made the aircraft something of a paradox. Its structure, built primarily from heavy stainless steel rather than lighter alloys, meant that agility was sacrificed for raw speed and strength. In combat, this limitation was clear. The MiG-25 was restricted to a modest 4.5 Gs. Against agile Western fighters like the American F-4 Phantom, this was a crippling flaw. In a turning battle, the Foxbat quickly found itself outmaneuvered, its pilot trapped in a machine designed for climbing and sprinting rather than twisting and dodging. The story became even more troubling at low altitudes. While the MiG-25 had been perfected for thin air at extreme heights, it was cumbersome closer to the ground. The thick atmosphere exposed its weaknesses, with its wings struggling to generate efficient lift and its engines burning through fuel at an alarming rate. At these levels, the fighter could no longer rely on its high-speed edge, leaving it clumsy and vulnerable to opponents built for flexibility across a wider range of conditions. The combat systems of the MiG-25 mirrored the aircraft itself, impressive on paper, yet flawed in real battles. Its radar was one of the largest and most powerful ever fitted to a fighter, capable of detecting targets from astonishing distances. But this strength came with major drawbacks. The radar emitted so much energy that it practically announced the aircraft's presence long before it could engage its prey, robbing it of the element of surprise. Moreover, the early missiles carried by the Foxbat were massive and designed primarily for high-altitude interception. They were deadly against bombers flying high and straight, but far less useful against nimble fighters that darted and weaved. Even so, the Foxbat was not without its strategic value. It terrified adversaries by simply existing. Western intelligence in the 1960s and 1970s often overestimated its capabilities, believing it to be nearly unstoppable. This forced the United States to accelerate the development of fighters like the F-15 Eagle, which eventually surpassed the MiG-25 in maneuverability and versatility. In this sense, the Foxbat shaped the global fighter race, not through direct dominance, but through the fear it inspired. Much of its reputation rested not only on raw speed and altitude, but also on the powerful electronics packed inside. At the heart of this beast was its radar, an instrument that revealed both the brilliance and the brute force approach of Soviet design. At the core of the MiG-25P interceptor was the RP-25 Smerch-A radar, which NATO codenamed Foxfire. This system stood among the most powerful airborne radars of its time. It relied on older but tough vacuum tube electronics, producing such immense energy that it could pierce through enemy bomber jamming attempts. Its detection range against a bomber-sized target reached up to 100 kilometers, making it a formidable piece of equipment in high-altitude combat scenarios. Yet despite its raw power, the Smerch-A carried a fatal weakness. It lacked look-down/shoot-down capability. This meant the radar could not tell the difference between a low-flying aircraft and the clutter of the earth below. In effect, it became nearly useless when tracking targets at lower altitudes. This limitation proved disastrous, since by the time the MiG-25 was introduced, NATO had already shifted its strategy. Instead of relying on high-altitude bombing runs, Western forces increasingly turned to low-level penetration tactics, deploying both bombers and cruise missiles that could sneak under radar coverage. The Foxbat, built to counter threats of an earlier era, suddenly found itself mismatched against modern methods of attack. When it came to weaponry, the MiG-25 was armed with the massive R-40 missile, which NATO referred to as the AA-6 Acrid. 4 of these heavy weapons were carried under the interceptor's wings, making them the centerpiece of the aircraft's arsenal. Much like the aircraft itself, these missiles were tailored for the high-altitude interception role rather than flexible dogfighting. The R-40 came in 2 primary variants, the radar-guided R-40R and the heat-seeking R-40T. Each missile was built with a very specific purpose, bringing down large, strategic targets flying at great heights. Their performance reflected this goal, with a range stretching up to 80 kilometers and a massive 100-kilogram warhead. The R-40 was engineered to obliterate heavy bombers in a single strike. Against such non-maneuvering aircraft, it was lethal. However, the limitations appeared once the Fox-Bat faced more agile opponents. Fighters designed for speed and maneuverability could outmatch the Acrid's bulky design and less responsive guidance system. In close encounters or against nimble aircraft, the missile's effectiveness dropped sharply. The Fox-Bat was simply never meant to duel modern fighters. Its size, power, and weapons all pointed to a very narrow mission set, destroying bombers before they could reach Soviet skies. The combination of the Smerche radar and the R-40 missiles highlighted the strengths and weaknesses of the MiG-25. On one hand, it could deliver an immense destructive force at high altitude, creating a real deterrent for any bomber attempting to breach Soviet defenses. On the other hand, the interceptor's rigid specialization left it exposed to evolving tactics. By the 1970s, Western air forces were fielding planes capable of flying low and fast, exactly where the Fox-Bat's radar could not function effectively. And yet, numbers and specifications only tell part of the tale. To see the MiG-25 for what it truly was, you have to follow it into battle. Its combat record paints a vivid picture, one of dazzling speed and altitude, but also of the unforgiving limits that no amount of raw power could escape. The combat story of the MiG-25 is as fascinating as the machine itself, a mix of brilliance, fear, and harsh reality. It was a jet that could soar higher and faster than almost anything in the sky, and that alone made it a psychological weapon. But when it faced the test of modern air combat, its strengths and weaknesses became impossible to hide. In the early 1970s, the MiG-25R reconnaissance version first showed its worth in the hot skies of the Middle East. Soviet pilots flying for Egypt took their Fox-Bats over the Sinai Peninsula, then held by Israel. They blasted through the sky at altitudes no Israeli Phantom could touch, and at speeds that left pursuers helpless. Cameras clicked away as the aircraft roared overhead, gathering priceless intelligence while the defenders below could only look up in frustration. For the Soviets, it was the perfect showcase of the Fox-Bat's reconnaissance power, fast, untouchable, and unchallenged. Not long after, India also put the MiG-25 to good use. Its MiG-25 RBS routinely crossed into Pakistani skies, photographing military sites deep inside enemy territory. Pakistani defenses had no answer. The flights were so one-sided that the aircraft earned a nickname among Indian pilots, the Pradhan, or Prime Minister, because it could go anywhere it pleased. During the brutal Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, the Fox-Bat played a more aggressive role. Iraqi pilots flew it not only as an interceptor, but also as a bomber. They claimed kills against Iranian F-4 Phantoms and nimble F-5 fighters, proving that, in the right hands, the aircraft could still be lethal. It was during this war that the Fox-Bat earned a reputation as both a hammer and a scalpel, capable of smashing targets from above or piercing enemy air defenses in daring missions. But the Gulf War of 1991 brought the MiG-25 into direct combat with the most advanced fighters in the world. On the very first night of the war, an Iraqi Fox-Bat scored a shocking victory. A MiG-25 PD launched a missile and destroyed a U.S. Navy F/A-18C Hornet, one of the few air-to-air victories scored by Iraq in the entire conflict. For a brief moment, the old interceptor had reminded the world why it had once been so feared. Later in that same war came the legendary Samura air battle. 2 Iraqi Fox-Bats were vectored against 2 American F/A-15Cs. At beyond visual range, both sides fired missiles in a tense duel that echoed the Cold War nightmares of superpower clashes. When the smoke cleared, neither side had lost an aircraft. It was a tactical draw, but symbolically it was stunning. Even a struggling Air Force could, with the Fox-Bat, challenge America's premier air superiority fighter. Still, the war also showed the aircraft's limits. Several Iraqi MiG-25s were destroyed by American FAR-15s, proving that the Fox-Bat's sheer speed could not always save it in modern combat. And in 1992, history was made when a US F-16 shot down an Iraqi Fox-Bat with the brand new AIM-120 AMRAAM missile, the very first air-to-air kill ever achieved with that weapon. The US just revealed a hypersonic aircraft that is reportedly faster than the iconic SR-71. Rumored to reach speeds exceeding Mach 5, this advanced aircraft has sent shockwaves across the world. With China and Russia also racing to develop their own hypersonic platforms, the US has begun the development of another mind-blowing aircraft that has taken the global defense community by surprise, sparking fears of a new arms race. Is the SR-91 Aurora truly the fastest jet in the world? What other interesting aircraft is the United States working on? Join us as we unveil the capabilities of the new SR-91, the fastest jet that has never been seen before. The United States is renowned for having more stealth aircraft than any other country in its possession, both in numbers and types. It currently uses 3 known stealth aircraft models and is developing at least 3 more. For each stealth aircraft like the F-22 Raptor, F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, or B-2 Spirit, there are others that never made it to active use. Some were canceled, while others were created for testing new technologies or systems, not for combat. Due to the secretive nature of stealth technology, new stealth aircraft are usually developed in complete secrecy. For instance, the F-117 Nighthawk was in service for years before the US government admitted it existed. Many prototypes, technology demonstrators, and even aircraft intended for service, but later canceled, remain secretive even long after they are retired. The Pentagon often funds the classified development of advanced technologies, commonly known as black programs. Today, the most secretive projects are called special access programs, where information is highly restricted. Within SAPs, there's an even more secret level known as unacknowledged SAPs, where details are so confidential that they are shared only verbally and at the highest government levels. Despite the mystery surrounding these top-secret aircrafts, today we'll explore one of the fastest jets that has ever been developed. And no, it's not the SR-71. The SR-91, also known as Aurora, is the popular name of a hypothesized American reconnaissance aircraft. It is believed that SR-91 Aurora is capable of hypersonic flight at speeds of Mach 5+. The Aurora legend began when reports surfaced that Aurora was accidentally mentioned in the US budget, allocated for black aircraft production. Aviation Week suggested Aurora referred to a group of advanced aircraft rather than just one. Ben Rich, former head of Lockheed's Skunk Works, later mentioned that Aurora was actually the code name for the stealth bomber competition, which led to the B-2 Spirit. As time passed, experts believed the US could develop a Mach 5 aircraft to replace the SR-71 Blackbird. Some people claim to have discovered unaccounted funds in the defense budget, possibly directed toward secret projects. Reports also emerged of unidentified aircraft sightings in California and the UK, featuring strange contrails, sonic booms, and other phenomena. These sightings were often linked to the rumored Aurora aircraft, despite the lack of concrete evidence. An engineer named Chris Gibson reported seeing a triangle-shaped aircraft refueling from a Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker, accompanied by F-111 fighter bombers while working in the North Sea. He observed the aircraft and later sketched what he saw. When the sighting was made public, British officials denied knowledge of such a black program, though they admitted they wouldn't be surprised if it existed. Group Captain Tom Eales of the RAF also reported seeing a mysterious aircraft over his house near the Mildenhall USAF base. The engine noise was unlike anything he had heard before, and when he made inquiries, he was told to stop immediately. Eales believed this was a new stealth aircraft called Aurora. Around the same time, there was an incident at Boscombe Down involving an emergency landing of an unknown US aircraft, which was quickly covered and removed with secrecy. A crash at RAF Boscombe Down was later connected to black missions. The site was heavily guarded, and the base was closed to all flights. Some suggested the crash involved a towed missile decoy rather than a secret aircraft. Also in Southern California, a series of unusual sonic booms was detected by sensors tracking earthquakes. These booms didn't match those from the space shuttle or other known aircraft, leading some experts to believe they came from a high-altitude, high-speed aircraft. However, nothing specific tied these events to any particular aircraft, though they fueled the Aurora legend. Now, to a very important question: did the Aurora succeed the SR-71 as the world's fastest aircraft? Well, let's explore the details of the Blackbird. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was a high-speed, high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft designed by Lockheed Corporation's Skunk Works division in the 1960s. It was built for speed and stealth, capable of flying at over Mach 3, which is 3 times the speed of sound, and at altitudes of 85,000 feet, making it one of the fastest and most advanced planes ever created. The SR-71's sleek, black design earned it the nickname Blackbird, and it was also known as Habu in some circles. The Blackbird evolved from the earlier A-12 reconnaissance aircraft, with Clarence Kelly Johnson, a brilliant aerospace engineer, playing a key role in its innovative design. Unlike its predecessor, the SR-71 was longer, heavier, and featured a 2-seat cockpit. It also carried advanced equipment for gathering intelligence, including sensors, radar, and high-resolution cameras. Its primary job was to gather intelligence at speeds and altitudes that made it nearly impossible for enemy forces to intercept. The SR-71 was built to fly at speeds with a 2-person crew sitting one behind the other. The pilot in the front cockpit flew the plane, while the reconnaissance officer in the back operated the surveillance systems and navigated the mission. This aircraft was one of the early attempts at stealth design, created to have a small radar signature. The plane was painted a very dark blue, almost black, to help manage its internal heat and blend in with the night sky, earning it the nickname Blackbird. Though the SR-71 had radar countermeasures, its best defense was its incredible speed and altitude, which made it nearly impossible to catch. With its low radar visibility, enemy missiles had very little time to detect, track, and hit the plane. By the time a missile was launched, the SR-71 was often already out of range. Even if a missile managed to get close, the SR-71 could simply speed up, and the missile would run out of power trying to catch up. The plane could also change speed, altitude, and direction, making it hard for enemy radars to lock onto it. The SR-71 flew faster than the Soviet Union's best interceptor at the time, the MiG-25, which also couldn't reach the SR-71's altitude. Throughout its service, no SR-71 was ever shot down. The SR-71 was powered by 2 powerful engines called Pratt and Whitney J58. These engines were designed to be very efficient at high speeds, especially around Mach 3.2, which was the Blackbird's usual cruising speed. At takeoff, the afterburner provided 26% of the thrust. As the speed increased, the afterburner took over completely, providing all the thrust at Mach 3. The maximum speed of the SR-71 was limited by how hot the air entering the engine could get, with the engine compressor only certified for temperatures up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. To start the SR-71's engines, a special cart with 2 car engines was used. This cart was placed under the engine and connected to a drive shaft that spun the engine up to 3,200 revolutions per minute, at which point the turbojet could start on its own. Once one engine was started, the cart was moved to the other engine. Later, a quieter pneumatic system was developed for use at main bases, but the old start carts were still used at smaller airfields. This extremely fast aircraft used a special fuel called JP7, which was hard to ignite. To start the engines, a chemical called triethylboron was used. This chemical ignited on contact with air, creating a green flame that was often visible during engine starts. The fuel also helped cool the aircraft, including the pilot and electronics, since an electric starting system wasn't possible due to the limited cooling capacity. On a typical mission, the SR-71 took off with only a partial fuel load to reduce stress on the brakes and tires. It would then climb to 20,000 feet in less than 2 minutes and reach its cruising altitude of 80,000 feet in about 17 minutes, using a third of its fuel. Despite a common myth, the SR-71 didn't refuel immediately after takeoff because of fuel leaks. Rather, refueling was needed because the plane's top speed was only possible with aerial refueling. The SR-71 often needed to refuel in the air during long missions. Supersonic flights usually lasted about 90 minutes before refueling was necessary, Specialized tankers called KC-135Q were used to refuel the SR-71. These tankers had modified refueling boom and special fuel systems to handle the different fuels needed by the SR-71 and the tanker itself. To help pilots during refueling, the SR-71 had a special display that projected a subtle horizon line across the cockpit instruments, giving the pilot clues about the plane's attitude. Northrop Corporation's electronics division, Nortronics, developed an advanced astro-inertial guidance system for the SR-71, based on technology from earlier missile projects. This system corrected navigation errors by tracking stars through a special window in the aircraft's upper fuselage. The ANS used a digital database of stars to navigate accurately, even at the SR-71's high speeds. It could control the plane's altitude, position, and even direct cameras and sensors. The system was so precise that it limited the aircraft's drift to just 1,000 feet off course at Mach 3. The SR-71 carried various sensors and payloads, including advanced cameras, radar systems, and electronic intelligence equipment. These sensors captured high-resolution images and electronic signals during missions. The plane had a range of cameras for different tasks, from wide-area imaging to detailed close-ups, as well as side-looking airborne radar and later a more advanced radar system called ASARS-1. The SR-71 was also equipped with electronic countermeasures to protect against enemy missiles, including jammers that could confuse missile guidance systems. To ensure the crew's safety at 80,000 feet, where regular oxygen masks wouldn't work, the SR-71's pilots and reconnaissance officers wore specialized pressurized suits. These suits were essential for surviving in case of ejection at high speeds and altitudes. The cockpit was pressurized and cooled to keep the crew comfortable, despite the extreme heat generated by the aircraft's Mach 3.2 speeds. The cooling system even used the fuel as a heat sink. During long missions, the crew had access to food and drink through specially designed containers and straws that could be used with their helmets on. This allowed them to stay nourished and hydrated while flying for hours at a time. Despite its retirement, the SR-71 remains a legendary aircraft, holding the world record as the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft, a title it has held since 1976. Its legacy continues with the development of a new UAV, the SR-72, which is expected to take to the skies by 2025. The SR-72, also known as the Son of the Blackbird, is being designed with more advanced capabilities than the Blackbird and will be built with advanced materials like carbon-carbon composites. But it gets even better. These materials can handle more extreme heat than the titanium skin used on the SR-71. Also, as stated earlier, the Son of Blackbird is expected to have great speed, stealth, and versatility. The prototype, if not already in operation, will include advanced avionics and possibly AI-assisted systems for autonomous operations, which earlier hypersonic aircraft did not have. A key feature of the SR-72 is its ability to reach hypersonic speeds up to Mach 6, which is considered to be much faster than the Blackbird's top speed. This speed allows it to outrun missiles and avoid current air defense systems, which have given the United States an advantage in reconnaissance and possible strike missions in heavily defended areas. Lockheed Martin is working with Aerojet Rocketdyne on a special turbine-based combined cycle propulsion system to help the aircraft achieve a cruise speed of over Mach 6. While there are engines that can power an aircraft at hypersonic speeds, they can't be used during takeoff and landing. So the Son of Blackbird needs an engine that can handle both. The turbine engine will provide thrust until the aircraft reaches Mach 3. Then the dual-mode ramjet will take over to power the flight at hypersonic speeds. To reduce drag, the aircraft will use a single inlet nozzle for both the turbine engine and the ramjet. This new mysterious aircraft's abilities are important for major power conflicts. Its fast intelligence gathering and strike capabilities support the U.S. national defense strategy, which focuses on being ready for intense conflicts with countries like Russia and China. Its speed and stealth make it a crucial tool for strengthening air defenses. Its development shows a strategic change in U.S. military planning, moving towards more adaptable and dynamic platforms that can operate in complex future battlefields. This change aligns with the Pentagon's priorities for modernizing space, cyber, and autonomous technologies. However, stealth technology might not work well for an aircraft like this, because radar-absorbing materials may not handle high temperatures. The jet's large infrared signature would also make it hard to hide. The aircraft might leave a trail detectable by radar, like the SR-71. But with its amazing speed and ability to quickly leave an area and outrun most non-hypersonic missiles, these issues are mainly theoretical. As for weaponry, bombs and conventional missiles aren't suitable for an aircraft like this, since they could collide with them after launching. And to avoid such deadly occurrences, the son of Blackbird will be equipped with laser systems instead of other weapons. The aircraft is currently equipped with an enhanced version of the Laws, which has a power output of 350 kilowatts and is capable of cutting through 5 inches of metal with its beam. However, the main advantage of using laser weapons is their ability to be integrated within the aircraft's structure and deployed when necessary, ensuring the aerodynamic performance of the aircraft to achieve hypersonic speeds. Another intriguing feature of the SR-72 is its cockpit design that is invisible when viewed head-on, similar to the X-59 that is being developed by the Skunk Works division. Additionally, the illustration of the son of Blackbird on Lockheed Martin's website revealed a port on the upper part of the fuselage, which is typically used for astronomical navigation systems. This design element is affectionately referred to as R2-D2 in reference to the renowned droid from the Star Wars universe. Like its predecessor, the SR-72 would also feature the most intelligent sensors and the highest quality cameras to take photos that cover 100 miles in each shot. However, there's more to the SR-72 than just its capabilities. Intriguing? Yeah, let's get into it. The SR-72 as a potential candidate for the future generation NGAD fighter of the U.S. Air Force is slated to be fitted with some of the most advanced technologies the world has seen. According to the Air Force's biennial acquisition report covering the fiscal years 2019 and 2020, the NGAD fighter would maximize its stealth features by taking an overall triangular shape, internally holding its payload, and having no distinct tail section, also known as vertical stabilizers. It is the first fighter in history to be unveiled with such a revolutionary design. Vertical stabilizers had always been required to keep an aircraft airborne until the concept of active flow control came into life in the B-2 Spirit. Active flow control uses computer brains on board to constantly adjust the flow around the aircraft to keep it airborne, similarly to how birds fly. This would result in a top-level stealth aircraft that comes at a price. The SR-72 would be capable of spotting targets, friends, and points of interest from tens of miles away, and also attacking them with precision. The sensors that make this possible come with maximum connectivity, and thus the ability to share their data with every other member of the fleet, whether it is a sixth-generation aircraft or not. In order to keep every member of the United States fleet connected to relevant information in real time, the U.S. would do away with radars mounted on aircraft and instead make use of electronically configured smart skins integrated into the aircraft's fuselage. This technique would result in increased sensor sensitivity as well as network adaptability. It would also aid with making communication easier across the fleet and ultimately improve remote control. Open architecture, laser weapons that can take out targets with unrivaled precision, a mix of high-performance guns, missiles, AETP engines capable of subsonic, transonic, and supersonic flight that cost over $6 billion to develop, loyal wingmen, top-of-the-line electronic warfare countermeasures, avionics, and communications are only some of what to expect on the fighter. But despite the already advanced features that this aircraft boasts of, decades of history have taught not only the United States, but other nations that an aircraft will always have room to be better, no matter how advanced it already is, especially with near-peer adversaries getting more and more near-peer. As a result, the SR-72 will come with an open architecture that enables it to take on new upgrades easily and quickly. All of these would combine to create an aircraft with an estimated unit cost of $1 billion and a top speed of Mach 6, the closest thing today to a truly hypersonic aircraft. There have been various speculations and reports about the SR-72's development timeline. In 2017, Lockheed Martin claimed the combined cycle hypersonic engine was ready for real-world application. The company suggested that a single-engine demonstrator could begin flying by the early 2020s, with a target of 2030 for a twin-engine platform to enter operational service. This Russian fighter possesses advanced capabilities and lethal features that have shocked the United States Air Force. Is this Russian fighter formidable enough to take on one of the most advanced aircraft in the world? What are the capabilities of this fighter? Join us as we explore the designs and capabilities of the only fighter jet that can beat the F-35. On June 8th, Russia took a significant blow when Ukrainian forces hit a Su-57 fighter jet at Akbank Air Base, about 366 miles from the front line. This was the first time a fifth-generation fighter jet was destroyed in combat, which is especially surprising considering that the Su-57's main competitor, the F-35 Lightning II, has over 1,000 units built. The Su-57, known by NATO as the Felon, is a single-seat, twin-engine fighter designed for multiple roles. It's one of only 4 fifth-generation fighters in the world, alongside China's J-20 and the American F-22 and F-35, the latter being the Su-57's closest rival. Let's explore the designs and capabilities of the Su-57. The Su-57 Felon is built for air superiority, excelling in aerial combat as well as ground and maritime strikes. It's equipped to be one of the most advanced fighters in the world, but it faces tough competition from the F-35 Lightning II. It is a fifth-generation fighter jet, known for being Russia's first stealth aircraft in active service. It's designed to be versatile, capable of handling various missions, and focuses on stealth and high maneuverability in all directions. The plane also features large internal bays for carrying weapons and advanced sensors, including a radar system that allows for a high degree of automation. Sukhoi, the company behind the Su-57, looked at the F-22 Raptor as a model for creating a highly maneuverable stealth fighter. However, they aimed to fix some issues they saw in the F-22, such as its limited ability to use thrust vectoring to change direction and its small space for carrying weapons. They also felt the F-22 wasn't suitable for the multi-role missions needed by Russia, as it focused too much on air-to-air combat with fewer weapons. The aircraft has a wide, blended body with 2 engines placed far apart and includes movable horizontal and vertical stabilizers, with the vertical ones tilted for better stealth. The wings are shaped like a trapezoid and include flaps and other control surfaces to help with maneuverability. The plane also uses thrust vectoring to improve its agility and has special extensions on the wings to improve control at high angles and recover from stalls quickly if the thrust vectoring system fails. For braking in the air, the plane's ailerons move up while other control surfaces move down, and the vertical stabilizers turn inward to create more drag. The Su-57 is made from a combination of materials, with about 40% being aluminum and 18% titanium, but it also uses a lot of composite materials, making up about 75% of its outer surface and 22 to 26% of its structural weight. The Su-57 was designed to handle multiple roles. Unlike the F-35, it has a large internal space to carry various air-to-surface weapons. These weapons are stored in 2 main bays located between the engines, along with smaller side bays near the wings. Keeping the weapons inside the aircraft reduces drag, which improves performance and helps maintain its stealth features. It is highly maneuverable and stable in flight, thanks to its advanced flight control system and thrust vectoring nozzles that can direct the engine's thrust. This allows the jet to perform complex maneuvers like the Pugachev's Cobra and the Bell maneuver, as well as flat rotations without losing much altitude. The aircraft's design and powerful engines enable it to reach speeds of Mach 2 and fly at supersonic speeds without using afterburners at Mach 1.3. This gives it a significant advantage in range and speed over older aircraft models. The Su-57 can fly over 1,500 kilometers at supersonic speeds, which is more than twice the range of the Su-27. It also has an extendable refueling probe to further increase its range. While the F-35 is a single-engine aircraft, the Su-57 packs 2 powerful fire spitters in its rear. On the F-35 is the Pratt & Whitney F-135 low-bypass augmented turbofan that provides 43,000 pound force of thrust with afterburner, thrusting the jet to a top speed of Mach 1.6 to 20 slower than the Mach 2 top speed of the Super Cruise-capable Su-57 with afterburner engaged, thanks to a pair of NPO Lilka Southern Isdeli 117 engines that produce a combined thrust of over 63,000 pound force. But what the F-35 lacks in thrust, it seems to make up for in engine stealth. The engine on the F-35 has a low observable afterburner that incorporates fuel injectors into thick curved vanes. These vanes are covered by ceramic radar-absorbent materials and mask the turbine. Its low observable axis-symmetric nozzle consists of 15 partially overlapping flaps that create a sawtooth pattern at the trailing edge, which reduces radar signature and creates shed vortices that reduce the infrared signature of the exhaust plume. The F-135 PW600 engine for the F-35B, a variant of the F-35 designed for the U.S. Marines, supports short takeoff and vertical landing by incorporating a shaft-driven lift fan. This SDLF was designed by Lockheed Martin and developed by Rolls-Royce as a key technology for the F-35, displaying the most impressive use case and performance. So much so that the system was awarded the prestigious Collier Trophy in 2001. The Su-57 is the first Russian military aircraft designed with a focus on stealth. To reduce its radar visibility, it uses several techniques similar to other stealth fighters like the F-22. The edges of the wings, control surfaces, and panels are carefully aligned and angled to minimize radar reflections. Weapons are stored inside the aircraft, and antennas are recessed to keep the stealthy shape intact. The aircraft is also coated with radar-absorbent material, or RAIM, to absorb radar signals and reduce the chances of detection. The entire fifth-generation class of aircraft is heavily dependent on stealth capabilities, so neither the F-35 nor the Su-57 is found lacking here. The American fighter was designed from the ground up with stealth in mind. Its manufacturer, Lockheed Martin, aligned its edges, serrated its skin panels, and masked the engine with easy-to-maintain fiber matte skin for low observability. They also reduced infrared and visual signatures, enabled the reflection of radar waves, and used strict controls of radio frequency emitters. The result is a radar cross-section lower than that of a metal golf ball. However, like other stealth aircraft, the Su-57's low observability is most effective against high-frequency radars, which are typically used by other aircraft. Low-frequency radars, such as those used for weather and early warning, are more likely to detect the Su-57 because of its size, but these radars are larger, more prone to interference, and less precise. To preserve their stealth profiles, both fighters by default carry their weapons internally, although they both have external hardpoints to carry weapons when stealth isn't the topmost priority. The F-35 has 4 internal hardpoints and 6 external hardpoints that combine to hold up to 18,000 pounds of weapons. These weapons are a combination of the most advanced American air-to-air missiles, air-to-surface missiles, and anti-ship missiles. It also wields conventional bombs such as the GBU-53/B Stormbreaker and nuclear bombs such as the B-61 Mod 12 nuclear bomb. For more rapid fire, the F-35 packs a 180-round, 25mm GAU-22/A4 barrel rotary cannon that fires 3,300 rounds per minute, which is far superior to the 1,500 rounds per minute of the 30mm Gryazev-Shipunov JISH-31 autocannon on the Su-57. There's a reason for this. The F-35, being a multi-role fighter, would be tasked with providing close air support to troops on the ground in a bid to replace the renowned A-10 Warthog. The Russian fighter has 6 internal hardpoints and 6 external hardpoints that combine to carry an estimated 16,500 pounds of weapons, slightly less than the weapons payload of the F-35. On its hardpoints is a combination of air-to-air missiles, air-to-surface missiles, anti-ship missiles, anti-radiation missiles, and conventional bombs. It's unclear if the Su-57 would be able to wield nuclear weapons like the F-35 can. The Su-57 takes things further with thrust vector control. The engine nozzles can rotate to direct thrust in different directions, allowing the jet to execute complex maneuvers in pitch, yaw, and roll. This level of control, first seen in earlier Sukhoi models like the Su-30 MKI and Su-35S, makes the Su-57 incredibly agile, capable of feats that seem to defy the laws of physics. The engines also include variable intake ramps for efficiency at supersonic speeds and retractable screens to protect against debris when taking off from rough runways. However, the AL-41F1 engines haven't been without controversy. In 2011, a Su-57 had to abort takeoff due to a compressor stall during the Moscow Air Show, raising concerns about reliability. Looking to the future, the Su-57M is set to receive an even more advanced engine, the AL-51F1, by the mid-2020s. This new engine, designated as Isdeli 30 during development, will provide even more thrust, which is up to 37,500 pounds in afterburner, while also being more reliable and stealthier, thanks to innovations like glass fiber plastic components and a new nozzle design with serrated flaps. As if that weren't enough, by 2023, reports surfaced that UEC Saturn is working on a sixth-generation engine design for the Su-57, pushing the boundaries of what this fighter jet can achieve. By December 2023, all new Su-57s delivered to the Russian Air Force will be equipped with this advanced Stage 2 engine, setting a new standard for power and performance in military aviation. The Su-57 is equipped with two main internal weapon bays, each about 14.4 feet long and 3 feet wide, and two smaller side weapon bays near the wing roots. The main bays are fitted with launchers that can handle different types of missiles. The UVKU-50L launcher for missiles up to 660 pounds, and the UVKU-50U for those up to 1,500 pounds. The side bays use VPU-50 launch rails. For air combat, the Su-57 can carry 4 long-range missiles in the main bays and 2 short-range missiles in the side bays. The primary medium-range missile is the R-77M, an advanced version of the R-77 with improved radar guidance and a dual-pulse motor. For close-range combat, it uses the R-74M2, a heat-seeking missile designed to fit inside the aircraft. There's also a new short-range missile, the KAMD, in development to eventually replace the R-74M2. For longer-range missions, the Su-57 can carry the Isdeli 810 missile, an upgraded version of the R-37M. For striking ground and sea targets, the Su-57 can carry precision-guided bombs like the KB-250 and KB-500, as well as a variety of missiles including the KH-38 for air-to-ground attacks, the KH-35U anti-ship missile, the KH-58 USHK anti-radiation missile, and the KH-69 cruise missile. When stealth is not a priority, the aircraft can also carry weapons on 6 external hardpoints. Additionally, a new hypersonic missile similar to the KH-47M2 Kinzhal is being developed for internal carriage within the Su-57. The Su-57 also features a 30mm autocannon mounted inside the aircraft near the right wing root. This cannon has an effective range of about 870 yards against aerial targets and 2,000 yards against ground targets. One main feature of the aircraft is a modern glass cockpit without any old-style analog gauges. Instead, it displays information on 2 large 15-inch multifunctional LCD screens, similar to the setup in the Su-35S. Additionally, there is a smaller multifunctional display and a digital control panel. The cockpit includes a wide-angle head-up display that gives the pilot key information directly in their line of sight. The primary controls are a joystick and a pair of throttles, with major functions managed through a hands-on throttle and stick system. The aircraft's canopy is made of 2 parts, with the rear section sliding forward to lock into place. This canopy is coated with a special material to reduce the plane's radar visibility. For pilot safety and comfort, the Su-57 uses the NPP Zvezda K-Kuyo 36D5 ejection seat and the Soji 50 life support system, which includes anti-G protection and an oxygen generation system. The pilot wears a Zeiss AH-10B helmet equipped with a digital display that tracks eye movements, helping to target enemies even at high angles. The oxygen system provides an unlimited supply during flight. The life support system allows the pilot to perform intense 9G maneuvers for up to 30 seconds. The ejection seat, along with the PPK-7 flight suit, ensures safe ejection at altitudes ranging from ground level to 66,000 feet and speeds up to 810 miles per hour. The system also includes a survival kit to help the pilot after ejection. Both the F-35 Lightning II and the Su-57 are fitted with the most advanced avionics and armament their respective countries have to offer. For the F-35, the AN/APG-81, Active Electronically Scanned Array Radar, AON/ASQ-239, Barracuda Electronic Warfare System, AN/AAQ-37 Distributed Aperture System, AON/AAQ-40 Electro-Optical Targeting System, and AN/ANQ-242 Communications, Navigation, and Identification Suite, all combined to provide rapid beam agility, multiple operational modes, all-aspect missile launch and target tracking, 10 radio frequency antennas, all-aspect radar warning receiver, self-defense against missiles, the detection and jamming of hostile radars, laser targeting, forward-looking infrared capabilities, long-range IRRS functions, and an impossible level of sensor fusion to give the pilot and friendlies an omnipresent tactical picture of the battle space without compromising stealth. All of these are made possible by software running on a shocking 86 million lines of code, which is more than double the 4 million lines of the Su-57's code. But this isn't a coding competition, and in terms of avionics, the Su-57 has its own statement to make. Its central integrated management system fuses all the data from the SH-121 radar and electronic warfare radio electronic system, the 101KS electro-optical system, multiple, the NO-36 radar DAR-101, X-band, active electronically scanned array radar, and two, the NO-36 radar L-band transceivers for friend or foe identification and electronic warfare. This allows for the total integration of avionics systems, maximization of pilots' situational awareness, and reduced workload. Still, the priority for the Su-57 is air superiority, and thus it has fewer avionics systems than the multi-role F-35. Unlike the F-35, the Russian fighter has the PAK-FA program. One of the main technical goals of the PAK-FA program is to fully integrate the Su-57's avionics systems, or sensor fusion, to improve the pilot's awareness of the surroundings and reduce their workload. The integration of these systems is managed by an information management system developed by GRPZ from Ryazan. The key systems include the Sh-121 multifunctional integrated radio electronic system and the 101KS Atoll electro-optical system. Unlike earlier Sukhoi aircraft, Sukhoi itself handled the integration of the IUS, rather than relying on RPKB of Armenskia. The integrated avionics suite, known as IMABK, uses fiber optic channels and runs on over 4 million lines of code. The Sh-121 system includes the NO-36 Bielka radar system and the L-402 Himalayas electronic countermeasure system. The NO-36 radar, developed by Tikhomarov NIIP Institute, features a main nose-mounted X-band radar with 1,114 modules and two side-looking X-band radars with 404 modules each, providing wider coverage. The radar antennas are tilted back for stealth purposes. The side radars allow the Su-57 to guide its own missiles while performing evasive maneuvers. The system also has L-band transceivers on the wing edges, which help with identifying friend or foe in electronic warfare. The L-402 Himalayas ECM suite works with both its own arrays and the NO-36 radar system, with one array located between the engines. Communication and data exchange between aircraft and command centers are managed by the S-111 system. The 101KS Atoll electro-optical system includes various sensors like the 101KSV infrared search and track, 101KSO directional infrared countermeasures, and others for navigation and targeting. The URST is mounted near the cockpit and can track multiple targets, while the DORS-EM system, a first for a fighter aircraft, has turrets mounted on the aircraft to protect against incoming missiles. The Su-57 can also deploy countermeasures like flares and radar decoys from dispensers in the tailboom. For navigation, the Su-57 uses the BINS SP2M inertial navigation system, which can work with GLONASS and is controlled by the IVS-50 computing system. KRET, the developer, announced in 2016 that it is working on a video processing system called Okotnik to improve target detection and tracking. The aircraft also has a monitoring system that can predict the lifespan of its composite parts, making maintenance more efficient. Additionally, the Su-57 could be used to test advanced AI and unmanned teaming technologies for future fighter programs, and it has even demonstrated autonomous flight without pilot input. It is important to note that over 1,000 F-35s have been built since 2006. While Russia struggles to build a Su-57 in any significant numbers, only 32 units of the fighter have been built since 2009, many of which can't currently take to the skies to protect their nation. And the ones that can are apparently being picked off and destroyed in the Ukraine war. The war has also reportedly slowed down the already slow production of the Russian fighter. So in a battle between the F-35 and Su-57, it'll be a case of entire colonies of hundreds of F-35s up against 24 Su-57s. It would be an unfair fight, and regardless of their capabilities, the winner can be seen before a single shot is fired. Can the United States F-35 withstand the threat of Chinese hypersonic weapons? Recent advancements in China's hypersonic technology have raised global concerns, sparking questions about whether the United States is losing its technological edge. Does the U.S. have the capability to counter these hypersonic threats, or is it at risk of falling behind in this critical area of defense? Join us as we delve into the groundbreaking comparison of two ultimate weapons, the F-35 versus Chinese hypersonic threats. China is making fast progress in hypersonic missile technology, putting it at the forefront globally and raising concerns in the United States. One major example of their advancements is the DF-17 missile, which is designed for speed and precision. It is a medium-range ballistic missile that uses solid fuel and is road mobile, meaning it can be transported and launched from various locations. They have also made breakthroughs in thermal protection and cooling systems, which are crucial for managing the intense heat these missiles generate during flight. These developments give China a clear technological advantage, showing their growing strength in modern military innovation. It's certain that they are not stopping anytime soon, because they recently achieved another major breakthrough in hypersonic missile technology, particularly with its thermal protection system. Chinese scientists have made significant improvements by adding steel nose cones to their new missiles. This advancement is crucial because it enhances the missile's ability to survive the extreme conditions it faces during flight. In August, China also announced the development of an innovative cooling device designed to manage the intense heat generated during hypersonic flight. Hypersonic missiles travel at incredibly high speeds, which results in a huge buildup of heat. Without proper cooling, this heat could damage the missile's guidance system, affecting its accuracy and performance. With the new cooling technology, the missile is better equipped to withstand these extreme temperatures, making it less likely to malfunction. This improvement allows the missile to fly more effectively and remain undetected, increasing its chances of successfully reaching and eliminating its target. These technological advances are a significant step forward for China's hypersonic missile program, giving it a performance edge in the field of modern warfare. As the race for advanced weaponry intensifies, these innovations could change the future of missile technology and warfare. One member of Congress is raising concerns. Representative Doug Lamborn, who is part of the House Armed Services Committee, held a hearing for his subcommittee this spring. The mood was serious. One expert on the panel said the United States is clearly falling behind China. Jeffrey McCormick, an intelligence analyst with the Defense Intelligence Agency, stated that China now has the world's leading hypersonic arsenal. The United States still has reason for optimism. Surprisingly, one of the best American hypersonic missiles is being developed by the U.S. Army. Known as the Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon, or by its nickname, the Dark Eagle, this missile has impressive capabilities. It can travel at speeds exceeding 3,008 human miles per hour and has a range of 1,722. The Dark Eagle uses a road mobile launcher, a feature also preferred by China for its missiles, making it a highly versatile weapon. According to the Army, the missile can fly to the top of the Earth's atmosphere and stay just out of reach of air and missile defense systems until it's ready to strike. By the time it's within range, it's already too late to react. Despite China's advancements, all is not lost for the U.S. The race to develop hypersonic missiles is critical, as China has made remarkable progress in this area. Their scientists have been steadily advancing hypersonic technology and already have fast, maneuverable missiles deployed. China's military continues to look for ways to improve these weapons, and its rapid progress is something the U.S. must be prepared to match. However, the United States is not far behind, and with the right focus and commitment, it can catch up to China. The issue lies in the way the U.S. military approaches hypersonic development. While China has been able to make steady, incremental advances in their missile technology, the United States has focused on separate programs across various branches of the military. This lack of coordination could slow progress. In contrast, China's approach is more streamlined, allowing them to make faster improvements and field more advanced systems. There's still a chance for the U.S. to regain its lead, but it will require strong, focused efforts. We have yet to experience a Sputnik moment where China might test a hypersonic missile in a high-profile launch that demonstrates its serious intentions to use these weapons for strategic purposes. A launch over Guam, for example, could be a powerful signal to the world of China's capabilities and intentions. Until such a moment happens, policymakers like Representative Doug Lamborn, who is raising concerns about the state of U.S. military technology, are crucial. They are pushing for the U.S. to stay focused on developing advanced hypersonic systems to counter China's growing missile capabilities. While there have been some obstacles and challenges in the development of American hypersonic weapons, the U.S. defense industry is known for its strength. With continued investment, collaboration, and focus, it's likely that the United States will catch up to China in this critical area of military technology. The arms race is far from over, and with the right strategy, the U.S. could still emerge as the leader in hypersonic missile technology. This leads us to one important question. Can the F-35 withstand the lethality of the Chinese hypersonic threat? Let's analyze the strength of this American airfighter. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is one of the most recognizable fighter jets in the world. Since it began service, this American-made fifth-generation aircraft has flown over 777,000 hours. Currently, 20 nations use the F-35, making it a vital tool for the U.S. and its allies. For years, the U.S. held air superiority with the introduction of the F-22 Raptor. However, both China and Russia now have their own fifth-generation jets and are working on sixth-generation designs. For now, the F-22 and F-35 remain America's top fighters. The F-35 mission systems are like the brain and eyes of the jet, making it one of the smartest aircraft ever built. Packed with advanced sensors and software, these systems give pilots a complete picture of their surroundings, making the jet a powerful tool in modern warfare. Key components include the APG-81 radar, which can track multiple targets over 150 kilometers away, and the Barracuda electronic warfare system, which can detect, jam, and protect against enemy radars. The jet also features a cutting-edge distributed aperture system with 6 infrared cameras that provide a full to 60-degree view, even at night. All this information is fused into a single clear display for the pilot, giving them unmatched situational awareness. Future upgrades include improved sensors, a more powerful radar, and even the ability to control drones during missions. With these advancements, the F-35 isn't just a fighter jet. It's a flying command center built for the future of air combat. Stealth is one of the F-35's most impressive features, making it hard for enemies to detect. Its unique design includes smooth, curved surfaces, precisely aligned edges, and radar-absorbing materials to minimize radar detection. Even the engine is cleverly hidden from view. The jet's advanced air intake system, called the diverterless supersonic inlet, further reduces its radar signature by eliminating gaps that could reflect signals. Remarkably, the F-35 radio cross-section is so small that it's been compared to the size of a metal golf ball from certain angles, even outperforming the stealthy F-22 in some scenarios. Its outer skin, made from durable radar-absorbent material, is designed to last longer and require less maintenance than older stealth aircraft like the F-22. The F-35 also reduces its infrared and visual signatures, making it harder to spot by heat or sight. It carefully manages its radio signals to avoid detection. While low-frequency radars can sometimes detect stealth aircraft, they are bulky, imprecise, and easy to locate, giving the F-35 a significant advantage. For training purposes, it can even use special reflectors to temporarily increase its radar signature. Its cockpit is like something out of a sci-fi movie, designed to give pilots maximum awareness and control. At its heart is a massive 20 by 8-inch touchscreen display, which shows everything from flight data to weapon systems and alerts. Pilots can customize the layout to fit their needs, making it incredibly user-friendly. Beneath this display is a smaller backup screen for emergencies, while advanced voice recognition technology allows hands-free commands. Unlike older jets with head-up displays on the dashboard, the F-35 uses a state-of-the-art helmet-mounted display system. This helmet projects flight and combat information directly onto the pilot's visor, so they can see critical data no matter where they're looking. It even integrates infrared and night vision, allowing pilots to see through the plane for incredible situational awareness. The helmet is so advanced that pilots can lock onto targets and fire missiles without pointing the aircraft directly at them. Each helmet costs a whopping $400,000, but its capabilities are game-changing. While the HMDS had some growing pains, like issues with vibration and night vision early on, it's now more reliable than ever. The latest version boasts improved cameras, sharper displays, and advanced alignment features. The F-35 cockpit and helmet work together to give pilots an unmatched edge in the skies, blending cutting-edge technology with pilot-friendly design. Without going on and on about the capabilities of the F-35, to answer the question, it is unlikely for this American aircraft to be able to directly withstand a hit from a modern Chinese hypersonic missile due to their extreme speed, maneuverability, and difficulty in detection, making them very hard to intercept with current technology. What is the United States Air Force doing concerning the threat that these Chinese hypersonic air force pose? The United States Department of Defense is ramping up spending on hypersonic weapons after years of warnings that China is pulling ahead in this technology. However, this new arms race comes with risks, especially as relations between the US and China continue to worsen. And there's limited information about China's advancements in this field. Hypersonic weapons, which travel faster than Mach 5, aren't a new concept. The US has been testing them since the 1950s. But investment in these systems slowed over the years. Meanwhile, China and Russia have made significant progress in their hypersonic programs. Russia recently demonstrated its capability by using 6 hypersonic Kinzhal missiles in Ukraine, the largest single deployment of these weapons during the war. Other nations, including Australia, South and North Korea, Japan, India, and Germany, are also developing hypersonic weapons. The US is now increasing funding and efforts to catch up, but the timing is tense, with US-China relations at their lowest point in decades. This competition could shape the future of global military power. The US Department of Defense reportedly plans to allocate $15 billion for hypersonic weapons development for the Army and Air Force between 2023 and 2027, as highlighted in a Congressional Budget Office report. This figure excludes the Navy's program, which recently awarded a $1.1 billion contract to Lockheed Martin for integrating hypersonic systems into Zumwalt-class destroyers. Experts have indicated that the US may be lagging behind China in this field. Reports noted that China's 2021 test of a nuclear-capable hypersonic weapon surprised many in the defense sector, showcasing advanced capabilities that exceeded expectations. It has been suggested that America's previous technological dominance, once considered untouchable, is now being challenged by China's progress. Observers have pointed out that this shift has spurred the US to accelerate its efforts in several areas. Concerns have also been raised about the absence of treaties governing hypersonic weapons, a situation some believe could lead to global instability, as seen during the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, analysts have noted that the major powers in this domain appear unwilling to pursue such agreements at present. Despite challenges, US defense officials, lawmakers, and weapons manufacturers continue to advocate for hypersonic technology, with the government now committing significant funding to advance the project. Hypersonic weapons are undeniably expensive, but they offer unique advantages that justify the investment. The US military began exploring hypersonic systems as far back as the 1960s, initially focusing on hypersonic flight for transporting people rather than weapons. By the 1980s, however, the focus shifted. During this period, the Air Force tested the maneuvering reentry vehicles, demonstrating that missiles traveling at speeds of Mach 5 or faster could be guided precisely to their targets as they re-entered Earth's atmosphere. The early 2000s marked a turning point when the US began serious efforts to develop hypersonic weapons under its Conventional Prompt Global Strike program. Today, 2 primary types of hypersonic weapons are being developed: glide vehicles and air-breathing missiles. Glide vehicles are launched on rockets and glide through the atmosphere at high speeds, while air-breathing missiles use engines to sustain their hypersonic speeds. Although US hypersonic systems are designed to carry conventional payloads, other nations such as China are pursuing nuclear-capable hypersonic weapons. This was evident during China's groundbreaking 2021 tests, which demonstrated the ability to combine nuclear warheads with hypersonic speeds, raising concerns about the global arms race. As the US pushes forward, these advanced systems promise unparalleled speed, precision, and flexibility in modern warfare, making them a critical focus for defense strategies. China has long sought ways to counter US missile defense systems, viewing them as a threat to its nuclear deterrence, according to Lyle Morris, a senior fellow at the Asia Society Policy Institute. Since the early 2000s, China has significantly boosted its hypersonic weapons program, especially after the US withdrew from the anti-ballistic missile treaty with the Soviet Union. With no restrictions on developing anti-ballistic systems, China felt compelled to develop a different kind of deterrent. One key focus of China's efforts has been glide-type hypersonic weapons. These systems start their journey atop a ballistic missile, explains Timothy Heath, a defense researcher at the RAND Corporation. Once the missile reaches a certain altitude, the hypersonic glider detaches and travels at incredible speeds within the atmosphere. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that follow a fixed trajectory, the glider can maneuver in flight, using the momentum from its launch to strike its target with precision. China claims its hypersonic weapons are ready for deployment, which Heath notes is a step or two ahead of the US, whose hypersonic program is still in the testing phase. This progress isn't surprising given China's advanced ballistic missile program and the US's relative underinvestment in similar technologies over the years. The real game changer with hypersonic weapons isn't just their speed, but their ability to maneuver and evade missile defense systems like the Patriot. These systems, widely used in the US and 17 other countries, struggle to track and intercept hypersonic weapons due to their unpredictable flight paths and the ability to skim the edge of the Earth's atmosphere before re-entering. According to defense experts, hypersonic weapons could potentially outmatch even the most advanced air and missile defense systems in the near future, making them a significant development in modern military technology. With China's successful hypersonic missile tests and rising tensions between Beijing and Washington, it's understandable to worry about the rapid pace of weapons development and heated rhetoric. However, there are significant obstacles to the widespread use of hypersonic weapons in combat. The high cost, around $15 million to $18 million per missile, combined with the practical realities of warfare, where basic weapons like artillery are often more effective, makes their use in battle questionable. Experts like Lyle Morris and Timothy Heath are skeptical about hypersonics' actual usefulness on the battlefield. A report from the Congressional Research Service points out that critics believe these weapons don't have clear mission roles, don't significantly improve U.S. military capabilities, and aren't necessary for deterrence. In addition, there's concern that China might share its hypersonic technology with other U.S. adversaries, such as North Korea, Iran, and Russia, all of which are developing their own hypersonic programs. As China and Russia strengthen their defense and technological ties, sharing knowledge on hypersonics wouldn't be surprising, says Elsa Kania, an expert on national security. One of the main concerns about China's hypersonic program is that the U.S. might be caught off guard. The fear of appearing less dominant in defense was especially strong after China's successful missile tests in 2021. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, called these tests China's Sputnik moment, drawing a comparison to the Soviet Union's 1957 launch of the first artificial satellite, which shocked the U.S. Despite the concerns, Heath argues that hypersonic weapons would not be the deciding factor in a conflict between the U.S. and China or any other nation with hypersonic capabilities. The U.S. has a significant edge in other military technologies like stealth aircraft, long-range bombers, aircraft carriers, and submarines, conventional forces that allow the U.S. to project power and dominate adversaries without relying on long-range missiles. As the U.S. continues to invest in hypersonics and other nations develop their own capabilities, it's crucial to establish some sort of agreement on how these weapons should be used in combat. Unfortunately, Morris notes, this may not happen until a major escalation forces both sides to confront the issue. With the current lack of communication between China and the U.S. military, the risk of misunderstandings or miscalculations is high. Furthermore, most significant weapons agreements have historically been between the U.S. and Russia. With Russia pulling out of the New START treaty, the last major nuclear arms control agreement, the hope for any future defense technology agreement seems distant at best. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.